Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. A bit of background. In early 2021, I quit my career in the tech industry. This was after the company I was working for went public and everything went downhill. I was sick of making money for the rich and needed some time to really live life. I spent a few months traveling, working on home projects, and doing whatever I wanted. One day, about 4 months into my freedom, I was having lunch with my best friend Sarah. "You need to stop being lazy and get a job," Sarah said, taking a bite of her salad. She had recently been hired at a company in the construction industry and mentioned there was an opening. The position was something I had zero experience in, but a change of career was appealing. I applied and promptly was given a phone interview. I spent some time researching everything about this position and after many interviews managed to fake my way in. Turns out this position was wildly different from anything I had done before. It taxed me in ways I had never experienced. Not only was my job stressful, my boss, Mr. Thompson, turned into a nightmare. He had worked there since the company was founded. He was part of the good old boys club, now. For everyone who doesn't know, the construction industry has virtually zero HR. This was close to $1 billion company and was still the same way. Mr. Thompson was a narcissist, sexist, liar, and downright jerk. Weirdly, most of that was directed towards others and not me. Sarah was one person who took the brunt of it. It killed me to hear what he would say to her. All of this took its toll on me. New Year's Day. About 3 months into my employment, January 1st, 2022 hit. I woke up at 2 a.m. with pain in my chest and my head racing 1,000,000 miles an hour. Luckily, my roommate Emma was a paramedic and happened to be home. I rushed over to her room and yelled, "Emma, I think I'm having a heart attack." She came out, took my vitals, asked some questions, and determined I was most likely having a panic attack. Sure enough, I calmed down and managed to not die. I had never had a panic attack until then. Throughout the following week, I continued to have flare-ups of chest pain and heart palpitations. I figured something could really be wrong, so I went to my doctor. He did a few tests and determined it was most likely some acid reflux. He prescribed some meds, and the following week was better. Then, one night when heading home from dinner with my sister, boom, I got rear-ended at a stoplight by a drunk driver. No skid marks. Didn't even attempt to stop. I felt a bit of tightness in my back, so decided to get checked out at the hospital to be safe. I got there and they took my vitals. My blood pressure was on the moon, like 180/100. They took it about an hour later and it was still high. They recommended I go see my doctor again. The next couple of weeks waiting for my doctor appointment was hell. I was having daily panic attacks, chest pain, trouble breathing, massive fatigue, the whole gamut. Finally, on the day of my appointment, I let my doctor know what was going on, and he determined I should go see a few different specialists and get all kinds of tests done to be safe. Throughout the next couple of months, I had everything poked and prodded. Because of the amount of tests that needed to be done, I missed a good bit of work. This turned Mr. Thompson against me. He constantly complained about me being gone. "You're never here," he'd grumble. "How do you expect to get any work done?" All the while, not an ounce of work was dropped. With my tech background, I also took it upon myself to start making reports and collecting data that I would present to him on ways of improving the department and company. I later found out he would take these reports, which at times could save the company hundreds of thousands to potentially millions of dollars, and present them as his own to the owner. This made me furious and didn't help with my physical issues. However, slowly I made it through all of the prescribed tests, and they couldn't find anything physically wrong with me. Turns out all of the issues were caused by stress and anxiety, something I had never had an issue with before. My doctor referred me to an amazing counselor that helped me learn how to manage the problems I was facing and get back to a reasonable state of mind. Although this never got to an acceptable level because of Mr. Thompson. I started to email HR with my issues with him and things I had witnessed with others. Most of this was met with unwillingness to help in any way. Cue the turning point. A dear coworker, Lisa, whom everyone loved and respected, decided to quit out of nowhere. She too worked under Mr. Thompson. In her exit interview, she gave the sole reason for quitting as Mr. Thompson. She finally hit her breaking point and enough was enough. However, because she was so well liked, this prompted some questions from the owner and other senior management. They wanted to know why Mr. Thompson was the reason for her leaving. They had HR set up a meeting with us in the department and our boss to go over our issues with him. We all were excited to finally, hopefully, get the people that matter to listen. We had the meeting, and we all laid out the issues with our boss and gave a multitude of examples. I went a bit overboard and had an entire presentation. Turns out this was all a charade to cover Mr. Thompson's ass. He was prescribed some management counseling, which I'm pretty sure he never did, and things continued on their merry way. However, now, with the knowledge Mr. Thompson had of our issues with him, he turned the volume up to 11. The constant berating, yelling, write-ups came flowing out. "You think you can undermine me?" he'd snarl during our one-on-ones. "I've been here since day one. You're nothing but a newcomer." It got bad enough that I started to secretly record every meeting with him. I saved every single email and documented every interaction with him. I continued to push for help from HR, but again, his status in the company kept him immune from any response. Thankfully, throughout all of this, I managed to keep my mental health in check thanks to my counselor's tools. I, once again, get sick. Yes, I got sick, but this time it was with a real cold and lasted a few days, all of which was covered by government-mandated sick time. I came back to work and not even a week went by when I got called into Mr. Thompson's office with other senior management. I knew this wasn't good. Mr. Thompson let me know that they were firing me for attendance. I was gobsmacked. I had never been fired in my life, and I knew I was an asset to the company's success. I didn't slack off. I didn't miss deadlines. The attendance excuse appeared to just be what Mr. Thompson thought would be easiest to get rid of me with. Now, I live in an at-will state. You can be fired for basically any reason except for a bad one. They presented me with a meager 2-week pay severance. I declined signing it, packed my stuff up, and left. I knew the whole situation didn't feel right, especially because I was familiar with the recent state laws that passed about sick time and an employer not being legally allowed to fire you for using it. Because of this, I went to my mom, who's been in the law field her entire life, and got a referral for an employment law attorney. Things start to look up. The day of my appointment with the employment law attorney, Mr. Rodriguez, couldn't come quick enough. I had gathered everything I had collected from my time at the company and presented it to him. The recordings on my phone, the emails, the documented interactions, everything. After showing the attorney, he pushed back from his desk and said, "Holy crap, you have a hell of a case here. They messed up bad." A wave of relief flowed over my entire body. Me thinking the only blatant violation was firing me for using sick time, I was taken aback when he proceeded to explain that the company made 4 huge violations. The sick time violation not even being anywhere near the top of the list. Some big things I learned from him. The meeting I had with Mr. Thompson, HR, and the rest of the department, where we went over all of our issues with him, was a key piece of evidence for one of their biggest violations. I learned this type of meeting is considered protected, concerted activity and covered under the National Labor Relations Act. The act protects against retaliation for having this kind of meeting. According to Mr. Rodriguez, all of Mr. Thompson's activities following that meeting could be considered retaliation. When it comes to health issues and how they affect you at your workplace, make sure you document every interaction with your employer. It's important to show that you made an effort to let them know of your complications and how they may affect you at your workplace. I sent countless emails to HR letting them know of my mental health issues, and their failure to make accommodations was a violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. Having recordings and documentation on how your employer interacts differently with females and males is important to prove a violation of the Civil Rights Act. After all of this, Mr. Rodriguez stated I had 3 options. Option 1, I could retain him and we could file a lawsuit. He explained that would be expensive and take a lot of time. However, it would most likely result in a good amount of money. Option 2, I could file claims with all of the departments that cover the violated acts. He explained that some of these departments can take years to investigate and process the claims. However, for some of them, especially the violation of the National Labor and Relations Act, the investigation can be absolute hell on the employer. This would probably be the biggest FU to the employer. Option 3, I go back by myself and renegotiate the severance, this being the quickest and easiest option. This option sounded very appealing. I really didn't want to drag this out for multiple years. I told Mr. Rodriguez that option 3 was most likely my choice, and he mentioned that I should probably start negotiations at 9 months of severance and full benefits. After consulting with people close to me, I decided to go with option 3. I met with HR and senior management, explained that I consulted with an employment law attorney, stated all of the acts that he felt they violated, and asked for 9 months of severance. 9 months? The HR manager, Ms. Johnson, exclaimed. That's outrageous! Not as outrageous as the multiple violations of labor laws, I replied calmly. After a couple of weeks negotiating with their attorney, we settled on 6 months of severance with full benefits. It's been about a year since this happened, and it still makes me feel overwhelmingly happy thinking about it. In the end, I found an absolutely amazing job in the same industry. Mr. Thompson ended up being moved to a position that wasn't in management, and hopefully, nobody will ever have to go through what I and others went through at that company again. The next one is an entitled people's story. I never thought I'd witness corporate karma in action, but boy did it hit hard at my company last year. I work at a mid-sized tech firm that's been growing pretty fast. We just moved into fancy new offices and we're hiring like crazy to keep up with all the new projects coming in. I'm on the marketing team and we got a new manager about 6 months ago. Let's call her Karen. From day one, Karen made it clear she was going to whip this department into shape. She implemented all these pointless new procedures and micromanaged the hell out of everyone. Morale tanked almost immediately. Karen also had this weird obsession with appearances and status. She was always bragging about her MBA from some no-name school and looking down on anyone she deemed beneath her. It was exhausting. Anyway, about a month ago, our CEO sent out an email saying he'd be spending time embedded in different departments to get a feel for day-to-day operations. Cool idea, right? Well, the day came for him to join the marketing team. Karen was out sick, so we figured we'd just show him around ourselves. This guy walks in, early 30s, dressed pretty casually in jeans and a hoodie. He introduces himself as Alex and says he's here to shadow us for the day. My coworker Emily gives Alex a quick tour and sets him up at an empty desk. He seems super friendly and starts asking us questions about our roles, processes, etc. We figured he was probably from HR or something. A few hours later, Karen bursts in, clearly still sick but not wanting to miss brownie points with the CEO. She takes one look at Alex and you could just see the judgment on her face. Karen marches over and says in this super condescending tone, "Excuse me, who are you and what are you doing here?" Alex looks a bit taken aback but calmly explains, "Hi, I'm Alex. I'm here to learn about the marketing department's operations." Karen sneers and says, "Well, I don't know who authorized this, but we're an extremely busy department. We don't have time to babysit some inexperienced assistant. Please pack up your things and leave immediately." The whole office goes dead silent. We're all looking at each other like, is this really happening? Alex stays impressively calm and says, "I'm sorry. There seems to be a misunderstanding. I'm not..." But Karen cuts him off. "I said leave. I won't ask again. And I'll be speaking to HR about this. It's completely unacceptable to send some junior nobody to disrupt my team." At this point, I'm cringing so hard I want to melt into the floor. Emily tries to step in. Karen, I don't think..." "Did I ask for your input, Emily?" Karen snaps. "This is why I'm the manager and you're not. I know what's best for this department." Alex looks around the room, his face unreadable. Then he sighs and starts packing up his laptop. Karen stands there with her arms crossed, tapping her foot impatiently. As Alex heads for the door, he pauses and turns back. "You know, I was going to wait until the end of the day to introduce myself properly, but since you seem so eager to know who I am..." He pulls out a business card and hands it to Karen. "I'm Alex Winters, CEO of this company. It's been enlightening to see how you run your team, Karen. I think we need to have a chat in my office. Now." I wish I had a camera to capture the look on Karen's face. Her eyes bugged out and all the color drained from her face. She started stammering. But you... I didn't..." "Now, Karen," Alex repeated firmly. They walked out and Karen looked like she was headed to her own execution. The second that door closed, the entire marketing team erupted in cheers. Emily actually did a little happy dance. About an hour later, Karen came back to grab her things, escorted by security. She avoided eye contact with everyone as she packed up her desk. Alex came in shortly after and called us all together. "I want to apologize to all of you," he said. "I've clearly been out of touch with what's happening on the ground here. I had no idea the work environment had become so toxic. I promise you that changes today." He went on to explain that Karen had been fired, effective immediately. He'd also be launching a full review of management practices across the company. Alex asked us to be patient as he searched for a new marketing director and encouraged us to come directly to him with any concerns in the meantime. The vibe in the office did a complete 180 that day. People were smiling and joking around for the first time in months. It felt like this huge weight had been lifted. Over the next few weeks, Alex was around the office a lot more. He set up an anonymous feedback system and started holding monthly town halls to hear directly from employees. A bunch of Karen's ridiculous policies got rolled back. We eventually got a new director who's actually competent and treats people with respect. Morale is higher than ever, and we're doing our best work. I later found out that Alex had started the company right out of college. He had deliberately kept a low profile, not wanting his age to be a distraction as the business grew. Karen had just assumed he was some inexperienced kid because of how he looked and dressed. The whole experience taught me a few important lessons. Never judge a book by its cover. Treat everyone with respect, no matter their position. Karma is real, and it can be extremely satisfying to witness. I'm so grateful to work for a CEO who actually cares about his employees and isn't afraid to get his hands dirty. Karen's spectacular downfall was a reminder that no one is above basic human decency, no matter how impressive they think their MBA is. The next one is a petty revenge story. About 2 weeks ago, I matched with this guy on Tinder. I'll call him Jake. Jake is funny, witty, sweet, and genuinely everything I was looking for. We end up talking over text for about a week until deciding to meet up for the first time at his place. Stupid, I know. We talk, drink a few beers, and are genuinely having a good time together. At some point, I go to the bathroom and see some female products on the counter and in the shower. When I asked, he tells me it's some things his ex left, and then proceeds to show me their last conversation to prove that he hasn't been talking to her. Then we start to cuddle, and he keeps bringing up having sex. I tell him, like I've told him before, that I really want to see some kind of commitment before jumping into sex. He then tells me it's not an if we get together situation, it's a when we get together situation. Obviously, my heart soared at hearing this. I'd told him about how in previous relationships I felt used, and that once I have sex with him, I'm afraid he'll just never talk to me again. Jake reassures me he would never do that to me, and that he's never felt so comfortable talking to someone before. That he's never had it feel so easy and unforced. I told him I felt the same way. He looks at me and says, I can see us going really far. Stupidly, I believed him, and we had sex. The next morning, I notice a pill bottle on the nightstand that has a girl's name on it, a book, and a couple of socks on the ground. He tells me it's his roommate's and that he understands why it looks a little odd. I let him explain himself. He says his roommate has a boyfriend and that they know each other from work and she needed a place to stay and he had an extra room, so it just made sense. I jokingly said, well, your mom didn't raise a cheater. If she did, I would tell her. I once again believed everything he said. We slept together again, then I left. Come to find out, him and his roommate were actually living together. He tells me he technically cheated on her, and he already told her everything. I reached out to the girl, ended up calling her and telling her everything. Apparently, Jake told her he slept with me, but that I didn't spend the night and meant nothing. Obviously, this was not the case. Then I remembered that little joke I told him about telling his mother, and his girlfriend simply loved that idea. I sent a draft of the text to her to double-check that she was okay with me sending it, and I said, "Hi, Jake's mom. You don't know me, and I'm so sorry to be sending you this message. I haven't been involved with your son Jake for long, but I thought he was everything I was looking for. I'll spare the details of our relationship and all that, but it turns out that he was living with someone else that he was romantically involved with, which I didn't know. He then proceeded to lie to both me and GFS name, make us both promises of having futures with him, and I'm sure this is not the man you raised him to be." She has not responded to that message, and honestly I wouldn't either if I was the one with a son like that. To be fair, I had warned him even though I was joking. Obviously there are more details within this story, but out of respect for his girlfriend and myself, I'll leave those things out. All things considered, I've most certainly learned to trust my gut from now on. Cheers to stupidity and feeling used. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Almost 10 years ago, I worked at a company where my department analyzed survey and secondary data, compiling it into handbooks each quarter. After 6 months of joining the department, my manager, who joined us 2 months after me, reorganized our tasks in an attempt to improve our efficiency. This manager was promoted internally and was notorious for kissing up to management. He was technically not qualified for the promotion due to a different background required for our department, but one of the C-suite members liked him a lot. He did have some expertise in other areas, but generally had an unpleasant personality, so many people in the company didn't like him much. Along with 3 new projects, I was assigned the handbook task for the first time. The meeting was in February, so my first handbook would be for that year's Q1. In the meeting, I also asked my colleague who had managed the project for 4 years to explain the usual timeline. She said it took 6 months, a time frame agreed upon by management for years. considering the person handling it would also have other important projects. This means for Q1 data, the printed copies of the handbook need to be ready by 30th of September. The 6-month period includes collecting the analysis from survey managers, and for secondary data, I would have to contact the data owner and do the analysis myself. I also have to work closely with the outsourced company that does the design and printing. I carried out the handbook project smoothly along with my other tasks, and by late July, the only thing left for me to do was to proofread the content. The next procedure required me, my manager, and the designer to review and finalize every page before sending it to the unit head for approval. Printing and delivery take about 2 to 3 weeks, so we aim to submit the design by mid-August and confirm the final version for printing by the last week of August. However, on the last Friday of July, a whole 2 weeks before our target timeline to send the design to the unit head, this conversation happened. Manager: OP, I need you to finalize everything today, because we are sending the design to the unit head on Monday. Me: next Monday? Why? We have 2 weeks. Manager: well, the unit head wants to see some changes around here, so I thought we could speed up the publication of this handbook to start. I told the unit head we would send the design to her on Monday. Me: okay, you could have discussed this with me first. I mean, the proofreading is almost done, I can get it done by today, but we still need to sit down with the designer to finalize and sign off. The appointment is in a week. Manager: can you do it tomorrow? Go ask the designer. Now, it was not normal in our company to come to the office and work on weekend, and of course I already had a plan for that weekend, so this was really annoying to me. At least I knew that the designer would have no issue moving it to the next day because he is very cooperative. Me: I can try. But tomorrow is Saturday. I'm not sure if he can make it. And are you sure we want to rush this? Because even if we meet the designer tomorrow, the hard copy will be delivered just 2 weeks earlier than the normal deadline. Is it that significant? Manager: yes, just go ask the designer now. So I called the designer, and as expected, he had no problem meeting on Saturday. Me: Mr. Manager, the designer is okay to meet tomorrow. Is 10 a.m. okay with you? Manager: huh? Puzzled look. Me: you also need to be there for the sign-off. Manager: I do? Me: yes, you literally need to sign off on the final version to send to the unit head. It's the normal procedure. TBH, he didn't need to be there aside from following procedure. He had already seen the design a few times and likely wouldn't have contributed much to the meeting. I would have loved for him not to be there anyway. But at that point, I was quite excited to make him come to the office on the weekend, when he obviously didn't realize he also had to be there with the designer. Manager: I can't tomorrow, I'm going somewhere until Sunday. Me: well, if you want to send this to the unit head on Monday, then you have to be here tomorrow. Manager: sigh, let me get back to you. About half an hour later, he came up to me with the sourest face ever. 10 a.m. tomorrow is fine, and walked away. I'm guessing he must have pissed off someone when he had to cancel his weekend plan. So the next day, he came in 1 hour late, not smiling at all, and was rude to the designer and me. He was really unhappy to be in the office on that day, but we got it done by 1 p.m. The following week, the story of how I made my manager come to work on Saturday was told around the company. Apparently, the plan that he had for the weekend was a group trip with some of his buddies who also worked in the company, and he had to make new arrangements to get to the place by himself and arrived late. A lot of people thought it was really funny, including the unit head and some of his buddies, and laughed at the image of him walking into the office on Saturday for some trivial yet necessary work. Nevertheless, the next 2 years that I worked on the handbook, he never promised anyone to have the handbook ready before the 6-month timeline. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.